Got a 1917 King Baritone Saxophone here to overhaul. Welcome to Hack a Week. Big box arrived today via FedEx. What is it? It is a 1917 HN White King Baritone Saxophone that I picked up on eBay. It came from New Orleans, so this saxophone probably played in some jazz bands, probably marched in a few Mardi Gras, but we're going to open it up and get started on it. It's probably going to need a full restoration and overhaul. It looks pretty tarnished, but what I want to do is just get it out, take a look at it, kind of do a quick assessment on it. If the pads are half-assed okay, I'm going to throw some cork on the neck, stick a mouthpiece on it, and see if I can blow a few notes. But this is the beginning of yet another saxophone project. Got some cork on here, mouthpiece, 2.5 reed, a Rico orange box. It's got some leaks, but it'll make notes. You gotta really squeeze on the keys to get them to seal right. But anyway, here we go. That's just not gonna happen. There's too much. There's a big split in the key down here where it's just pouring air out. But it makes notes. So octave key works. There we go. Got all the way down to that bottom note. Long ways to go before it's playable, but wow, what a tone already. So as mentioned, this saxophone came from New Orleans, and it was in the shop of a gentleman named Dennis Bradbury, also known as Dr. Sax. And he passed away, unfortunately, in 2018. Worked on many saxophones for many years, and he had this in his collection of his own bought up saxophones, I guess. It's been in storage since 2000. And since he was known as Dr. Sax, and I like to name all of my saxes, this one is henceforth known as The Doctor. My wife Lisa thought of that. She thought it'd be a great name for it. I think so too. It just seems to fit for a baritone saxophone. So we're going to get started taking it apart. This is the easy part. Everything just goes in that little tray right there as far as the screws and hinge rods, etc. Just throw all the keys in a pile. When I first did one of these, I was really meticulous about keeping things in order, but I realized that it gets out of order and it'll all go back together. I took plenty of pictures ahead of time, so I know where things go, and I've got a lot of work to do on this, on resoldering a few things, etc., and cleaning it all up, getting the tarnish off from the silver. So here we go. Disassembly and time lapse. And there you have it, 14 minutes later, completely taken apart with a pile of keys and rods over here, hinge rods, screws, etc. here, and that little pile of whoever made this little nest. Ooh, it was a mouse or something a while ago, I take it, because the thing's been in storage. So He may have bought it that way. Anyway, now I think what happened with this, the story that it's telling me, is it got dropped like that maybe once and took a pretty good slam, because it sure looks to me like the body is doing this a little bit. It's got a bit of a curve to it. And when I look down the body and sight down the body, yes, it definitely does. Things are a little bit out of line there. And I can put a straight edge on there and be able to tell right away just how bent things are. Well, it doesn't take an engineering degree to see if this is bent. This body did get bent. Look at the tone hole where it's touching that wooden dowel there. Now, granted, I'm using a wooden dowel for a straight edge, but it's fairly straight. And point being is there is a huge gap in the middle. And as we get down to the bottom again, it's touching that tone hole, big gaps, and touching the top one. So we're going to have a little straightening out to do here. That's going to be a bit of a challenge. Today the doctor is having a spa day in the bathtub. Hot water, dish detergent, a little bit of Pine Sol. I'm just going to let it soak all day. So if the sax originally got bent by something hitting it hard this way, what you need to do is have something in here that you can strike against that's in solid contact with the body, that's not going to deform anything in that area, where you can basically just invert it, put your hand right around here somewhere, right at the fulcrum of this lever, and then wham down like that, a good shock, and bend it back. Just another shock back through it. The shock through it will pop it back into place, hopefully. Now on a baritone, what do? You don't have the option to put a plug in there. I could, I guess, unsolder the whole crook, and while I'm at it, maybe straighten out this dent, etc. But I really don't want to do that. I really want to see if I can leave that intact. I've got some ideas to do with this dent. We'll talk about that later. But my idea for this area right here is to make a sort of clamp. Let's see how big around this is first. So the diameter of that is about 38.5 millimeters. Well, now it just so happens that an 1.5 inch paddle bit, wood drilling bit, look at that. That is absolutely the coolest thing ever, is just the right size. So let's get this thing clamped on there and see if it's going to do the trick. First, I got to make sure it's going to fit back here. So now we have to align it perpendicular to the tone holes in that bend, and that looks like that's about it. That's pretty darn tight. Now we need to whack it, but not on the workbench. This is a little too resilient. It's going to bounce. I need to smack it on a really good solid surface. The workbench in the garage is much better because it's got big 4x4 posts going to the ground. So we're going to move operations out there. Let's see. Got my dowel here, which serves as a pretty good straight edge. It's actually not really that warped at all. It's a pretty good round dowel. It's close enough to at least give me an idea if I've made a change. So, as I mentioned, fulcrum points right about here, belt to body brace. And so I need to hang on to it there, hang on to it back here, and just give it a firm whack and see what we get. And it has moved a little bit. It's going to take a pretty good hit because it took a pretty good hit in the other direction, so let's see what we get. Definitely closer. It's time now to get a real straight edge on here. Okay, got a piece of aluminum channel that checks out nice and straight. Now we can get a little more accurate. Wow, it's almost there. I've only got about maybe 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters in this area. So a couple more light smacks. I'm going to try doing it now with the fulcrum being up here. See what I get. Yeah, there we go. It's getting a little better now. Maybe. Okay.
One more thing that is much better too is the alignment of all of those posts right there. Kind of hard to do it with the autofocus kicking in, but I can sight down those now and they are all nicely aligned, which is very important. Okay, back inside on the workbench with my straight edge. Let's take a look at what we've achieved here. This looks pretty nice all the way down the line now. Everything touches the straight edge. So that actually worked quite well. And this tone hole right here that had a pretty severe downside right there, had a low spot right there. It was high here and pushed in there because that's where the bend was going on. That looks a lot better. It's still going to need some leveling. It's going to need quite a bit of work. You can see there the rocket back and forth. It's still got a pretty severe low spot. But I may be able to pull this up a little bit right here. But much improved. So I think I'm going to move on to trying to get a few dents out of this crook now. The lyre post got hammered pretty good. That's what bent the whole body. That's what I think anyway. Sure looks like that's the direction that everything got hit in to shove it all that way. The simplest thing I think I can try with this is just to try bending it back and see what happens. See if it pulls some of the dent out. Worst case, it pops off from the brass and I've got to resolder it. But if it's a good enough bond, I may be able to bend this back. Let's see if I can get on this with a homemade key tool. Don't know for sure. I think it's going to be, yeah, it might work. There we go. Yeah, it looks like it's just, yep, it's not soldered completely. It is pulling away. But, might be able to just try resoldering it and then give it another shot. See if I can pull it back. Yeah, so messing with it a little more, the post pulled away completely. But what I'm going to do is see if I can clean up some of this solder that's on here and then see if maybe we can solder this back and try doing a little pry action and see if it'll stick well enough to pull the dent out. Gonna get a little flux on here just because to kind of help out with things. And once this gets molten, I am going to take a rag and just wipe it. Try not to burn myself in the process. Yeah, that's definitely some soft solder. It's looking like it's close to melting already. Yes, indeed it has. And the neat thing about working with it tarnished right now is all of that oxidized silver, nothing's going to stick to it. Trying to line it back up right where it was before. And where I really want the bond to be is on the part furthest away from you. But I need to get some solder back in here too. This is all a temporary joint to see if I can pull that dent out. Okay, all cooled off. Let's give it a shot. It's either gonna pull some of the dent out or it's just gonna break again. I'm gonna get after it here with the parallel pliers and see what happens. Ugh. You know, I gotta pull out at the same time because I might just push in the other portion. I don't want to do that. I want to take dents out, not create them. Oh, it's coming out. A little more. It's pretty strong solder. Seems to be holding quite well. Yeah, it's pulling away now, but definitely pulled out the dent. Okay, I was afraid of that. It did push in this side just a little bit. So now what I need to do is do this whole process all over again. And let's see, we want to flatten this out, get that soldered back in place, but I want to pull this, I want to pull that section out a little. What I want to do is solder this post to the body here, to the neck, the crook. Okay, quite simply, just going to grab on here and pull. Kind of wiggle and pull. I think that's about as good as it's going to get. Let's give it another go. It's either going to hold or it's just going to pull right off. I don't know. Kind of feeling like it's going to pull right off. If it pulls even a little bit of the metal out with it, that's okay. That's what I want. Gotta get on this with some different pliers. Let's try these. Okay, that pulled a little. Now let's clean it all up and see what we got to work with. I've got this all wired in place, ready to solder back on to the crook. So here we go. Let's heat it all up, and we're just gonna sweat in some solder. Fill that gap underneath there because that's where I couldn't get all of the dent out. This post down here was dented in quite a bit. I managed to pull it back out by pulling up on the post, and of course the solder joint broke loose, but now I've got it all prepped and set up and ready to set back in place. So basically all we need to do is get some heat on there and feed in a bit of solder, and it's probably going to settle down. Right now it's got a slight raised bit of tension to it. And there it went. I need to make sure that it's pushed in parallel with the rod, and it is. Now let's see, I'm going to feed in just a little bit of solder from this edge. And we'll get some from the other side. Make sure I get a good strong joint there. Got a little bit of solder sitting out there on the other side, but I can get rid of that later with a little bit of solder wick. That's a wrap for part one. Next time, on part two, we will get into cleaning all the tarnish off from this thing, and then we're going to move on to some more repairs, more soldering, and eventually we'll have a working saxophone. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time,